Hi, everybody. This is Maya Zahira with psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. We're now starting our monthly YouTube live. Our topic for tonight is we're having a book launch party for my new book, Revealing the False Light Agenda. So I'm here a little bit early to give people a chance to join. So, if you're watching the replay, you can fast forward a few minutes. We're going to just let people join, and I'm going to do my technical part over here, so don't mind me. And we're going to talk about some really good stuff today. I always recommend that you have a pen and paper ready. Okay, because you might want to take notes. All right. I am semi-tech savvy. I'm not terrible, but I just now realized that with the device that I'm using, I can actually, oh, wait a minute, what's happening here? With the device that I'm using, I can do some things that I didn't realize. So yay. Okay, now let me get to the page, and then we'll be ready to go. Welcome, welcome, everyone. As soon as I hit my 50s, I now am one of those people that needs multiple different pairs of glasses for different things. I'm sure some of you can relate. Okay, so we're all set. Welcome. Please let me know where you're joining from. Okay. And I think I'm going to just jump right in. As always, I'm going to have to be glancing at my notes. And to make sure that I stay on track, I always have at least usually 2 pages of notes, but today I've got 1 page of notes because I'm going to be referring to my book as well. I always cover a lot in these classes, so I always want to make sure that I don't leave anything out. So starting off with a quick introduction and shout outs also as you're joining. Please let me know where you're joining from. And those of you who are watching the replay, I'm sending you a lot of love, the replay watchers. This is a YouTube live, so there is chit chat at the beginning, and that is what we do. And it's fun, and you can always fast forward past it. David Daly says hello. Ron says, hey Maya, hope you're doing well. Lioness of Gaia says hi. Joe Sahani says hi. I've got to change glasses. I don't mind getting old, you guys. I have friends who are like so upset that they're getting old, and I really feel for them. And I'm like, I earned my gray hair and my eyeglasses. David Daly, Lioness of Gaia, says that she's in Utah. Awesome. I hope to someday visit Utah because it's not that far. I'm in Arizona. Ron says, you look so cool and incredible. Thank you. Joe Sahani says, you are so pretty and sweet. Oh, you guys are cool. Thank you. That's very sweet. Welcome, welcome. Just a little personal share as a few more people are joining, and then we're going to get into the teaching. I was having some serious thought yesterday, and I was like, Maya, you should like be having your hair dyed and like have a more quote professional look. You should like dye your hair and not be this like casual whatever, because you're the author of 4 books and blah blah blah. I thought about that for like 2 minutes, like a minute and a half, and then I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. Because here's why it's ridiculous. I don't know about you, but I truly value authenticity. By authenticity, I mean being your real self rather than a persona. I get it, and I don't have any like judgment toward authors or like public figures who need to like uphold a certain image. Well, this is my image. It's hippie Maya, granola head, earthy, nature loving Maya. So what you see is what you get, and there's no persona. This is me. So let's just segue right into the introduction. I am a real person. Although I have been a spiritual teacher and guide for over 30 years, so long time, and I've always had intuitive and psychic and spiritual gifts my whole life, but also I'm just a real person. I went through major issues of spiritual warfare, actually throughout my whole life, but it wasn't until 2016 when the universe or the powers that be or God or creator, whatever, hit me over the head with a 2x4, and I was presented with like real life spiritual boot camp situations where I was faced with more major spiritual warfare, and like more than ever before. And I was not able to find support. I was not able to find the right support. I was finding a lot of like fluffy new age. I was reaching out to colleagues, and they did not know how to deal with a significant negative spiritual issue, because it was all like, we don't talk about negative, you can only talk about positive, and they'd all speak in a soft voice. And I say this jokingly, I say it with love, I don't have any ill will. I still have a little frustration. Like, I wish that they had been able to help me, but that was part of my boot camp lesson, was that I had to realize that I had to figure this out myself. So in my first book, Darkness Disguised as Light, I tell the story of the major psychic attack that I went through, plus some of my previous history with spiritual warfare. This major psychic attack that I went through in 2016. I share that story and how that brought me into being more of a general feel-good spiritual practitioner into working in the field of spiritual warfare and helping people with psychic attack, entity attachments, dealing with black magic, all the uncomfortable spiritual stuff that the love and lighters never wanted to talk about, right? So my new book, Revealing the False Light Agenda, is a couple of things. It actually continues the story. So the first part of the book, you get to experience what I experienced, which were situations that were very unexpected, that truly validated that what I went through in 2016 really did happen. And I don't know about you, but like, even if you've experienced something yourself, but it was such a weird situation that there's like 1% of your brain that's like, no, how could that have really been real? You know, even if 99% of your brain is like, that shit really happened. There was 1% of my brain that was like, you know, it's still hard to believe, even though it happened to me. Well, the beginning of this book, the first few stories validate. I went through these experiences that totally validated that what I went through really happened. And I still, you know, for a little while after that attack in 2016, I still wasn't 100% sure about the type of entity that I had experienced. But once I had these validating experiences, the stories that I tell at the beginning of this new book, then I was totally sure. And as I go through the book, I have more and more experiences with different types of false light entities, which I'll describe in a minute for anybody who's new to that. And I had more and more experiences with these types of trickster entities, to where now when I talk about what happened in 2016, and when I work with clients who are having these issues, I am 110% certain that I know exactly what I'm talking about. There's no doubt in my mind. And I'm an open-minded skeptic, which is why I had like that tiny bit of doubt, even in my own experiences that were so real and so traumatizing. But once I had more and more and more experiences of my own and with clients, like there's no doubt, no doubt. And this is why I had the authority to write this book that's all about false light entities, because I've had so many experiences with it. So, so that's a little bit about who I am. I have been working full-time helping people with issues of spiritual warfare for since 2016, actually. And before that, I was doing more generalized spiritual coaching and energy healing and teaching all the levels of Usui Reiki. I was doing like all that sort of stuff. But then it became a lot more focused on spiritual warfare, psychic attack, and that sort of thing. So this is what I do. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe all this stuff. And I'm learning new things every day, because I'm getting, maybe I'll call them inner downloads, because I don't channel from entities. I bring it from within my soul. I'm getting more information every day. And also learning more from my clients. When I observe patterns happening over and over again, then I know, okay, this is a thing. This is a pattern. This is something that happens with a lot of people. So I saw that there were a lot of comments that came through. Thank you for using the chat. I'm going to take a second and look at that. I might not read everyone's comment, so thank you for giving me grace over that. And I'm just going to look at your comments and see if there's anything that I'm going to read out loud or questions. And also, I do have a question for you guys. Who has read the book? And it's okay if you haven't read it. You'll still learn from this video, okay? Even if you never read the book. Hopefully you will, because you will learn so much more by going through the experience of reading the book and understanding all the stories of what I went through. But even if you don't ever read it, you will learn from this video. Who has read the book? And what was your biggest takeaway? Which story was most compelling or most unsettling or most informative? Or which story helped you learn something important about false light? Or was there anything new that you learned about false light? And do you have any questions about the stories or about the information? And I'll talk about the format of the book in just a minute. And there's also some really interesting information about what prompted me to write the book. I think you'll be interested in that. So let's look at some of your comments. Grace Walker says, spiritual bypassing drives me coconuts. I love it. Coconuts. Yes. It drives me nuts too. I just can't I want to grind my teeth with the positive vibes only stuff. It's especially because I value authenticity so much. It drives me crazy. Lioness of Gaia says, me too. Grace. Give me a second to see here. Linda Roberts says she just finished it. Hey, Linda, I saw your review online. No, I saw your review for the third book. Thank you for that review. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't reviewed my book yet, any of the books that you've read, please do review them. It helps a lot. I kind of don't have enough review. I have some reviews, but I need more reviews. So go ahead and review it when you get a chance. Awesome. So Linda, you just finished it. Were there any questions that you had? We have a loud motorcycle driving by. I'll just get a drink while we wait for it to finish driving by. Okay, little breather. Let me talk about the structure of the book, and then I'll talk about what prompted me to write the book, because there were some very dramatic things that made it obvious that I needed to write the book. And I explain those things in the book. Pardon me. Okay, the format of the book. I had been planning on writing a book about false light for a while now, and I had it on my list. I have like a Word document. These are the books I'm planning on writing, and it was just sitting there. And I was like, yeah, it's not the right time yet. I even had an outline mapped out for an alternate version of a book on false light that was basically all information. And then I just kept waiting, like, when is it going to be the right time? And also, if you've read the book, you know that I had a struggle where I would try to tell people about false light entities. Oh, I haven't defined them yet. I will do that in a second. I would try to tell people about false light entities, or I would try to warn someone if I could see that they were what they were channeling was from a false light entity, but they didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to believe it, or they would say, "Oh, that's just something that like stupid people who don't have any discernment at all. Those people over there do that, but that's not an issue that I would ever have." So I couldn't seem to get through to people. And I even spoke with some people in the truther movement, excuse me, UFO, etc. And they just kind of were like, yeah, we know about false light. We don't really want to hear what you have to say. And as I watched some of their content, I realized that what I was talking about and what they were talking about with false light were very, very different things. I think, like, for example, the fact that I can clairvoyantly see the different specific types of entities that are these trickster beings, and I'll teach about that today. So I ended up, so I was going to write this book on false light, and it just kept feeling like it wasn't the right time. I don't want to put it out there, put all the work if people, like, the world isn't ready for it yet, right? Because I've all along, the reason why my YouTube channel is so small, it's only like 2,500 people, and it's not a contest, but it is small. And one of the reasons is because I'm like, people are not ready for my message yet. And so I showed up early to the party. And so I'm just like, and I can psychically see that. I can see timelines, and I'm like, okay, I'm early, but I just keep putting forth content. So when more of the people show up, it'll already be there for them. But so I kept feeling like it wasn't the right time to write the book. And then a couple of really dramatic things happened where I had some really unexpected encounters with some extremely powerful false light entities. And recently, so right now we're in September 2025, and so this was in March of this year. March and then April, I had two really major run-ins with some very dangerous false light entities unexpectedly. And one of the situations I was in, I feel that I was in mortal danger. And then the other situation was not as dangerous, but it was still very troublesome. And after actually the first situation, the one in March, I remember waking up the next day and putting my feet on the side of the bed and sitting up and saying, okay, I have something to say now. Because the situation, and I can't go into details, and I do share the story in the book, but I've changed details for people's privacy and protection, and for my protection too. But the whole situation with the person who had a very powerful false light entity hooked into them, it could have been avoided. And that's what gave me the conviction. Like, I think I personally can't help that person. I do pray that they do receive help, but I personally, and when you read the story, you'll understand why. There are very few people that I have not been able to help. I can't help every person on the planet, but this was rare. It was like, I cannot help this person. And you have to read the story. I don't want to give it away. It's near the end of the book. I knew that I could not help that particular person, but I had such strong conviction that that situation could have been avoided. That person didn't need to go through that. Unfortunately, they're probably still dealing with it. But it was unnecessary. Like, if more people really took the issue of false light entities seriously and they really understood it, then hopefully they wouldn't get hooked into it in the first place. So that was what really gave me the conviction to start writing the book. And not only start writing the book, but I had the epiphany that, oh, this aspect that is giving me this conviction, it's the fact that I personally, either me personally or through my clients, I have experienced multiple situations of false light. Some of them were very minor, but validating and informative. And some of them were very serious and jarring and upsetting and dangerous. And I've had all of these experiences and other people haven't. And it's like, I had this epiphany, like, oh, when I explain false light to people, a lot of people aren't really taking it that seriously because they haven't had the like jarring multiple experiences that I've had. Therefore, they're just not relating to what I'm saying. That's just matter of fact. So I realized this book needs to be the stories, many of the stories of the things that I've experienced. And through the stories, the intention is that you will learn through the ways that I learned, through my firsthand experiences, my firsthand encounters with some of these entities, and how I learned this is how this type of entity operates. This is what happens with this type of entity. This is how false light shows up. And that you will learn the tactics through those stories. And through the seriousness of the stories, then hopefully you and more people will take the issue more seriously, will believe it. And then there's actually 2 chapters that are information, and there is a chapter that's all about the entities. The chapter 1 is primer of false light entities, and then the chapter 10 is also information, understanding the shapeshifters among us. And I'll go into more detail about that in a little bit. Both of those chapters are all information, bullet points, helping you understand all the nitty-gritty of what false light entities are, what types of entities tend to be these tricksters, and etc. All the rest of the chapters are stories that are, I think, very impactful stories. Now, my intention is that people would relate and hopefully believe based on the stories that I'm sharing through the book. But not everyone believes. Shortly after I published the book, a couple of days after, I was unknowingly featured on a podcast that I clicked on it and read their like mission statement is to debunk false light nonsense. And I'm not false light. If you've been, sorry, I totally misspoke. To debunk new age nonsense. I've got false light on the brain tonight. To their mission statement is to debunk new age nonsense. And I'm not new age. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I speak out against a lot of the new age toxicity. And I'm grateful for like the free publicity. And, you know, when you're in the public eye, people are going to have all sorts of opinions. That is normal. I get it. And I just want to be very, just, what's the word I want to use? Transparent. I just want to be very transparent and say that, like, writing the book, especially when you read the final chapters where I was literally in danger, and then having the courage, even though I had been in mortal danger, having the courage to take that mortal danger and decide to write a book, which put me in more danger because I was on the shit list of these entities that I was writing about. It was not an easy process. I literally did not leave my house for 3 months. I wrote this book in 3 months. I think I left the house twice to go do the drive up and go option at Walmart for groceries, where I parked in the parking spot and they brought the groceries out to me and I drove straight home. Like, I did that twice, I think. Other than that, I went out in my yard, which is nature. I live out in nature. And then I would go back inside and I would write and I would write. And then I would work with my academy students and I would work with my clients, and then I would sleep. And then I would write some more. And I literally did not go anywhere or do anything for 3 months because I had to get the book done. I knew that I was really being targeted by dark forces as I was writing the book, because they, especially the jinn did not want me to write the book. And so anyway, when I only watched the first part of that podcast that I was unknowingly featured on. I watched the first part of it. And after having gone through this major trial where I had been in mortal danger I'm not kidding, in order to put this book out into the world, and then to hear this podcast that's like debunking and like, oh, she looks like a new age drum circle lady, ha ha ha, that I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, so, and then like, she supposedly had this happen to her, she claims this and that. And again, I am truly grateful for the free publicity, but I'm being transparent when I say I saw the first part of it on a Sunday morning, and then I turned the rest of it off. I said, this is not helpful to me. It probably was, it was perfectly fine. It's free speech. People can say whatever, right? But I thought, this is not helpful to me at this time to watch this. So I turned it off, and I had to do some processing emotionally for a couple of hours. I was like, oh my God, I literally almost died writing that book. And it's just really hard that this is like the first thing that hits me is like that podcast. And I just wanted to share that, like, behind the scenes, a little personal share. And by the way, it's been, I don't know, a couple weeks since then. And now I literally don't care. I don't care about that podcast at all. Literally don't care. But this was like a couple of days after I had gotten the book out in the world. And I was like beaten down. Like I had not left the house. I still had not left the house. It had been 3 months, hadn't left home. I was like exhausted. I had done this like huge thing that was so important to me, and I feel like it's important for the world. And so it was like I got knocked on the head by a hammer. I was like, oh my God. Like that's anyway, that's one thing that happened, and it does not bother me at all anymore, by the way. So it just is what it is, and it's part of being in the public eye. But I did have to take a couple of hours on that day. And I'm sure you will understand, like if you've created a project and you literally had been in mortal danger in order to do this thing, it's like your baby, like this is my thing. And how could people not believe that I went through this? I know that I went through this. So anyway, one of my points is that in writing the stories, my hope was that people would be able to read the stories and maybe believe, and maybe be more likely to take the issue seriously. And what I was shown really quickly is that some people will never believe in like paranormal and spiritual situations because they're not experiences that they personally have had. And that just is what it is. Like they don't have any way to relate to that. And that's fine. Like those people are just not ready for that message. So I promised that I would define false light. I waited way too long to define it. If you're new to my channel and you're like, what is she talking about? False light entities is the term that I use for any negative, non-beneficial entity, spiritual being. So a negative spiritual being that is posing, pretending, masquerading as a positive being. So this could be a negative entity that's pretending to be angels, an angel. Negative entity that's pretending to be your spirit guide. Negative entity that's pretending to be council of alien beings that are going to channel important messages to you so you can share them with the world and write books. That reminds me, there's a story in the middle of the book where I went to a spiritual gift shop and there was a false light entity at that gift shop that followed me home. And that if you've read the book, you know that story is kind of heartbreaking. That was hard for me to write that story. If you're an animal lover, that was a tough situation, but it was also very informative. That particular false light situation showed me in such a detailed way how convincing false light entities can be, because this I immediately recognized that there was something in that shop, and I was like, oh well, they must be doing a lot of weird channeling events at this shop. And then as I walked out to my car, I was like, oh, this thing's trying to follow me home. I tried to block it. This particular type of entity, a jinn do not acknowledge boundaries. So just normal boundaries of telling it that it needed to stay there and not follow me home. They totally ignore boundaries. They don't listen to that at all. So it followed me home. And then it proceeded to try to pretend to be a whole bunch of different things. And in fact, that night, I was trying to sleep and it kept talking to me. Jinn will often talk directly into your head, like telepathy. And it kept saying, we are the Council of Orion. Do not be afraid. You can trust us. We are here to share messages with you that you can share with the world. And I was like, I woke up in the morning and I was like, wow, no wonder so many people are fooled by this type of thing, because, it was trying to it was trying to tap into my ego. Like, oh, you'll be a really important spiritual person if you channel these messages. And it also was trying to tap into like me having a big heart. Like, oh, you'll be able to help so many people if you channel if you channel these messages from us. And like this went on for hours, all night long. You can trust us. But then, you know, it shifted into different types. So it was like, okay, the Council of Orion didn't work. So then it shifted into other kinds of entities, and it just kept trying different things. And my sense was that that false light entity, that jinn, it was a jinn. It had never encountered someone like me who knew about them. Because it's like, if it knew that I understood about how they operate, it wouldn't have kept, it was like it kept trying and trying. And I was like, wow, this entity it doesn't get it. This entity doesn't get it, doesn't understand that I know exactly what it's doing. And I don't think it had ever encountered anybody. You know, it just had all of these other earnest spiritual seekers visiting the shop, not realizing that what was hooking into them was a negative entity. And that was in Tucson. But I'm not going to say, I don't ever give identifying information, which store it was or anything like that. But you just have to be really careful wherever you go. But here's the thing. In the book, I share several situations, encounters of false light in New Age. When I first had my awakening to the issue of false light entities in 2016, because it was a jinn that attacked me in 2016. The jinn in 2016 was working with a healer in the Midwestern town where I used to live, and it was pretending to be a council of angels. So for a few decades, she had been working with this, quote, council of angels. That was not a council of angels. It was one jinn. Jinn are unique in false light entities, and that one jinn can show up as multiple entities at the same time. So a council of aliens, the Galactic Federation of Light, you could pretend to be the Galactic Federation of Light, channeling messages to you. In my case, one jinn was pretending to be the Council of Orion. So aliens, councils of angels, councils of ascended masters, other types of councils or collectives that channel through people. That's jinn. Jinn are doing that. It'll be a one jinn. But anyway, in 2016, that's when I really had my awakening, where I really understood about false light. I think I lost my train of thought. Sorry, guys. But let's talk about, let me read your comments, and then I'm going to talk about the different types of entities that I've talked about jinn, but I want to talk about the different types of entities, and I want to go over some sections in the book. Okay. And if you have questions at all about false light, then now's the time to ask. I've had a couple people email me and let me know that they really enjoyed the book and they would like to talk with me and ask me questions about the book. And unfortunately, my schedule doesn't allow me to do that that type of thing anymore. About 10 years ago, I was able to do that. I will say, I used to be, even just 5 years ago, 6-7 years ago, I was working well past midnight serving people. And it was not good for my health. So this is a healthy boundary, and I'm sure you understand. So you can ask questions in the video, And if you're watching the video later, you can ask questions in the comments. And I regularly go and look at the YouTube comments. This is where you can communicate with me. I'm not able to meet people for coffee and questions and stuff like that. I am not able to at this time. Okay. Linda says the information about jinn and how they're different from other entities was very interesting. And Grace says, yes, I'm very interested in learning about the jinn. Yeah, I think that even if you're interested in false light, like the imposter thing that's going on a lot in the New Age movement, or if you're interested in understanding jinn, either way, or if you want to understand how to discern, maybe you're more involved in Christianity. There's actually some stories about situations that I experienced in Christianity, within Christianity. So no matter what your reason is, I think you'll learn a lot. Okay, and I think I remembered the train of thought that I lost earlier. So I'll return to that in just a minute. Lioness says, it's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Mark Twain. Yeah. And in today's, especially in New Age, in today's culture that really uplifts this positive vibes only, and the kind of an underlying aspect of positive vibes only is that you don't think anything negative, which means that you trust everything and you don't use discernment. And so it's very easy to fool people. In my third book, The Dark Side of Spiritual Healers, Teachers, and Lightworkers, I talk about how easy it is in the New Age for predators, like human beings who are predators, to target people in the New Age world because of this lack of discernment that's really, taught and encouraged. And then when it comes to spirits, same thing. There's all these predatory spiritual beings out there, and it's so easy to fool people in the New Age. But I know what I was going to say earlier is that, yeah, when I first had my awakening about false light in 2016, I thought that the issue was just really in the New Age world. I thought that there's all these New Agers that are channeling trickster entities, and that's where this problem is showing up. But I quickly was shown, and you'll see through the stories in the book, that it's not just in New Age. I had a couple of really, especially one very troubling encounter within a Christian context with a false light entity that was a demon. It was a demon pretending to be some different positive beings. And then I've also encountered false light within the holistic medical fields and holistic healing and other areas as well. So, and then also, like at the tail end, it was like the positive forces were on my side by making sure that I included what needed to be included, but it was still really uncomfortable because right when I thought when I thought that I had all the stories for the book, I had one more encounter, which was in April. I mentioned that I had a very dangerous encounter in March, and then boom, right after that, I had another encounter with someone who in the book I call Alex. And this is someone who is very involved in the UFO movement. And this person is very, there is a jinn, false light entity that is completely hooked into this person and is pretending to be a particular goddess. And so it was like this very eye-opening thing for me that when I first woke up to the false light issue in 2016, I really thought, oh, this is just a new age problem. All the all the new agers that are doing spirit channeling and stuff like that. But it's like, I found out that, Alex and many of the people that Alex associates with are dealing with this same entity, this same jinn, and this is in the UFO movement. And so holistic healing, I encountered it in Christianity. Now, I feel it would be unfair for me to comment on other religions that are non-Christian, because I was not raised Christian and I didn't have any direct experience. I did not, I might be able to speak on it in the future, but I did not have any encounters within the Jewish religion, within any Buddhist groups or Islam, and by the way, jinn are taught about in the Quran within the Islamic faith. But I don't have any direct experience with those faiths, and I don't feel that I can speak with authority in a way that would be respectful. So I can say with authority, as someone who was raised in the Christian faith and Catholic religion, I can say, without any hesitation, that false light is a problem in those arenas as well, not just New Age. That really blew my mind. I was like, I really had this belief in the beginning that it was just a problem in New Age. And then when I started running into it in Christian and Catholic contexts, I was like, I kind of, went into existential crisis over that for a little while. Like, how is this happening? But it's literally everywhere. So that is something important to know. So let's take a breather for a second. Read a few more comments, and then I'm going to teach you about the different types of entities. Grace says, how do you notice that you felt something wrong with the initial contact, that it didn't feel as lighted? I'm going to read the next part. I'm sorry, I meant to type, at the initial point of contact, did you feel an uneasiness, something not genuine in those initial exchanges? Okay, let me do my best to describe this. So basically, in a nutshell, when I went through the attack in 2016, that was an encounter with a very nasty jinn that tried to tear my soul out of my body. That's what I mean by it was nasty. Like, this thing was a pretty serious entity that did not want me to mess with the people that it was hooked into. So what I think is that when I went through that trauma of that entity trying to tear my soul out of my body, I already had intuitive and spiritual gifts. But after that, and the whole situation was trauma, but that moment was the most traumatic probably of my whole life. That moment of that entity direct attack. But I went through 3 weeks of attack, but that was like the climax of the attack. Going through all of that woke up a different level of spiritual ability for me. And some people have had trouble believing this, and I get it. That's fine. But the ability that it woke up in me is the ability to discern, to see, feel, know, and understand false light. And I also had major downloads, awakenings within about all things spiritual warfare, psychic protection, etc. But here we're talking about false light. So from that awakened ability, then when I had run-ins, encounters with other types of false light entities in the future, I had immediate discernment. I knew right away. It was like, like once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once an ability is awakened, it's awake. And so that's basically my answer to your question. It's that so that after that attack in 2016, it wasn't that I had to figure out each encounter. It was that I immediately knew every single encounter. And I highly recommend that you read the book. It's like you're going to learn so much more than you're learning in this video. Like going through and living those stories as secondhand as you're reading them will truly help you understand how I went from having that initial trauma that woke up that ability, then to having those more and more and more experiences, and how each time my understanding was deepened. My understanding and my discernment of false light entities was deepened. And I was like, okay, now I've seen this 5 times. I now know this is definitely for sure this, right? So I am kind of have a weird inner makeup in that I'm very intuitive, but I'm also analytical. And so my mind like organizes all these patterns of, these are the common patterns that I see with false light entities. And it's more than I could go through in our video today. So that sort of answers your question. And you guys, I'm have this new habit now of sucking on mints so that I don't start coughing from a dry throat from our video. So sorry for the crunching. All right, see a couple more comments, and then we'll talk about the types of entities. Grace Walker says, yes, I've always found it very difficult to simply trust an entity because they present themselves to me, spiritual groups, because they keep saying you have to surrender. Very confusing. Surrender has its place. In my academy group this morning, we were talking about like at times in your life when it's important to surrender to circumstances while having a balance of also reaching for the next better thing. That's a good way to surrender in your life. Surrendering to entities, bad idea. That is just bad spiritual teaching. Bad, bad, bad. Okay? It's just bad. Not good. And I know you know that. Which is why you're questioning things. Grace says, it's like a radar. Yeah, so I now have, I've been calling it the spidey sense. But I have the false light spidey sense. Like I know it. A lot of clients come to me from all over the world who want validation. Like, can you tell me if this experience is false light and what kind of entity it is? And I can read that situation at a distance. So like I say in the book, some people are really gifted at playing the piano. Some people are really gifted at accounting. Some people are really gifted carpenters. Like, I'm terrible at all of that, okay? But my gift is spiritual discernment, discernment of spirits. I had some of that gift before, but it was blasted open in 2016. And so it's a spidey sense, it's a radar. But my hope is that in reading the book, people will kind of secondhand be able to obtain some of that spiritual radar. That's my hope. Okay, a couple more comments here. Okay, I don't see anything else that I'm gonna... that I'm going to read. I see a couple of scripture verses, but I'm not going to read all of those, but thank you for sharing. Okay, let's get into some of the different entities. Several people have given feedback for the book, and they've said that even those who said that they are usually a slow reader, that once they started reading the book, they couldn't put it down, and they read it very quickly. The teacher part of me, because I've been an educator for a long time, when I got the book, I was like, when I had the test print, there was, for like 3 seconds, my brain said, oh, it's too small. It should be a big, fat book. And that lasted for about 2 or 3 seconds in my brain. And then I said, no, this is perfect. Because people are going to read this in a reasonable amount of time. They can read it quickly and they can obtain the information. And that's the point. That's the point, is for you to be able to get what you need, right? Okay, so let's get to chapter 1. Chapter 1, Primer of False Light Entities. So first part of that chapter, I define dark forces, which is a term that I use quite frequently just as a descriptor. And false light entities. Now I define false light entities. Let me go ahead and read this, just since we're going over the basics. False light entities. This term signifies any dark, evil, non-beneficial spiritual entity that is pretending to be a positive spiritual being. These tricksters are particularly skilled at shape-shifting, changing from their true form into a different appearance in order to fool the targeted person or group of people. The imposter entity may shift into the form of an animal, deceased loved one, angel, spirit guide, ascended master, religious figure. Yes, even they'll transform into Jesus or God even, which blew my mind. Fairies or earth spirits, benevolent aliens, even fantasy characters, and more. Some of these false light entities are exceedingly convincing in their trickery, fooling even those who believe they are using proper discernment. I cannot emphasize this enough. Many of these beings are absolute masters of manipulation and illusion. Okay. I'm going to read this other section, which I think is important, because I hear people throw the term false light around a lot. And a lot of times, and I've noticed that when they're throwing it around, they're just kind of using it as a catch-all term to indicate something that's like a dysfunctional spiritual teaching or something that they don't agree with. Oh, that's false light. That's false light. And I specify in the book, of course, people are going to use terminology however they want to. But when I'm speaking of false light, I'm talking about actual entities that are posing as negative entities posing as beings of light. So defining false light. Some people erroneously use this term to refer to any and all non-beneficial, unhealthy, or misguided spiritual teachings, as well as any ego-based spiritual practices. Others lump anything relating to negative energy or dark entities as false light. These are incorrect uses of the term. It is important that we are clear about this so we can gain an accurate understanding of the concepts in this book. Put simply, false light is referring to anything connected with false light entities, which, as stated above, are negative beings posing as good. For example, In the case where a spiritual teacher channels messages from an imposter entity, false light entity, both the channeled message and the spiritual teacher would be considered false light. The same would be true for anyone writing books, generating online content, or creating artwork, oracle cards, or music that is channeled via false light entities. Both the creator and the content would be considered false light. This is not about labeling people in order to be hurtful. Rather, this terminology helps spiritual seekers who are working diligently to gain discernment as they choose which teachers and materials are beneficial and which might be compromised by deceiving spiritual forces. Yeah, so I see some of you are having trouble with the chat, with the comments on the YouTube live. Yeah, sometimes you have to leave and then come back, apparently, for it to like recalibrate. So I'm glad you all are figuring that out. Okay, so I promised that I would teach you about the different types of entities. There's a section in this chapter, common types of false light entities. And these are the most common types of spiritual beings through all of my experiences, my personal experiences, and those that I have observed and worked with closely with clients. So many, many cases. So the common types of false light entities. I'm not going to read this section to you, but I'm going to basically review it. Okay, so the first type of the first entity that is commonly that commonly acts in the role of false light. Ghosts or spirits. These are earthbound human souls that have chosen to not move on to the afterlife. These are the least powerful and the least adept, like the least skilled out of all of the shapeshifters that we're going to talk about. But there are plenty of spirits who will pretend to be something that they are not. There are plenty of spirits, earthbound spirits, that are troubled individual. Either they're troubled or mischievous or outright evil. There are plenty of those in the astral realm, and they love to play games. That is it. That's the agenda, is they are having fun with you. They think it's a fun game. Now, some of the other entities have a different kind of agenda. Okay, but that's the first type, ghosts and spirits. Demons are the second type of, and these are in no particular order, but demons are the second type of negative spiritual being that is skilled at shape-shifting. So demons, certain types of demons, so there's a hierarchy where the lower level demons are not really capable of shape-shifting into other things. They're lower intelligence demonic beings. But then we have the mid-range to the high-ranking demons. They are able to shape-shift, and they can actually get into your mind and figure out how you might be most easily manipulated, and then show up as that thing. And this was something that I saw at a Catholic conference where man standing at this podium was channeling, he thought it was the Virgin Mary, and it was a high-ranking demon. And I will let you read the book too. It was extremely creepy, but I'm not going to give away the story. But demons can in fact do that. And their agenda is a little more serious than just fooling around and playing games. The demons overall, whether they're shapeshifting and acting as a false light entity, or they're just being straight out demons, either way, They are usually trying to initiate fear, suffering, or even energies of adoration and worship, because they want to absorb and feed off of that, whether it's pain, suffering, adoration, worship, all of the above. Whatever they can elicit from the person or the people, they will feed off of that, and it gives them power. Okay, so that's demons. Next one on the list is jinn. Jinn are spoken about in Middle Eastern folklore and in the Quran. And before I went through my attack in 2016, being totally honest, I knew nothing about jinn. I had heard about genies in Disney movies, which is like the happy Disney version of a very negative entity. So don't be fooled. They are not, happy, lovable, like funny creatures. These are very dangerous. And in fact, I personally have found them much harder to deal with than demons, believe it or not. Jinn are the most skillful and intelligent shapeshifters. They are so skilled at shapeshifting that they are the only ones on the list that I've observed so far that one jinn can pretend to be multiple entities, which is what is very confusing for people. A person is going to be like, how could a whole council of angels appear to me, and it's one entity? Like, they can't believe that. But that's classic jinn. I've seen it so many times. So they will either pretend to be one thing for a long time, like someone's spirit guide, or they will rotate. For example, they might pretend, here's where it gets really tricky. They will shapeshift into a jinn, a single jinn, because they don't tend to be working in groups. Demons I might see working in groups. Jinn are psychopaths who don't play well with others. So it's usually a single jinn. The single jinn might shapeshift into one or more demons. So it's not actually demons. It's a jinn pretending to be demons. So it might then attack the person, and then 10 minutes later, it will change into angels or Jesus or something like that, and pretend to save the person. Now, is that effed up or what? And it really makes me think about, I was raised Catholic, and I was raised with the stories of the saints. And there are many stories of saints who went through that exact scenario. They were so holy that they were being attacked by demons, and then they would go into this, quote, ecstasy, this ecstatic state, where then they would be, having these like communion with God or angels or Jesus. And I'm pretty sure that was jinn. I'm pretty sure, because that's exactly how they operate. So jinn are psychopaths. They do not respond to boundaries. Like, one of the reasons why I say that demons are easier, it sounds so crazy to say that. Demons are easier because you can set forceful boundaries with demons, like exorcism boundaries. And they might fight back a little bit or a lot, but you can set those strong boundaries and you can push them out. And in fact, I've pushed out demons with, moderate levels of boundaries. Like, if I say, I'm not playing with you, you need to leave, they leave. It depends, obviously, on a lot of things. But the difference though with jinn, if you set a boundary with a jinn, you're kind of screwed. Like that entity is gonna lash back at you in a way that could be horrendous. So, and I share a story in the middle of the book. This is the one of the stories that I mentioned that's kind of sad. I learned that the hard way. I tried setting direct boundaries with a jinn, and it did not go well. I'm going to say, fortunately, it was my own situation and not a situation with a client. So I was blessed in that the negative result happened to me. It was a very sad situation, but at least I didn't have to learn that through a client. And then I immediately put that new knowledge to work, that as soon as I had any other clients with jinn issues, I knew, okay, we have to take a backdoor approach, is what I call it. You can't be direct with jinn. You can do all your personal cleansing, spiritual clearing, but you don't yell at it. You don't tell it to get the F out. You don't scream exorcism prayers at it. You don't do any of that, because the circumstances will be very bad if you do. But you can do your personal cleansing, and then we have to do the backdoor approach where we clear and address and heal any ways that the jinn is getting in. So if you have unhealed wounds, you have past traumas, you have past life or ancestral issues, I psychically track down and CSI whiteboard all of that with you, and we go, okay, here's how it's getting in. And then we heal, and we remove all of those, what I call access points, so that the jinn no longer has a way in. And then we starve it of attention, because they feed off of attention. They feed off of adoration. They also feed off of suffering. So that's similar to demons. But they love to be worshipped and adored. Jinn love to pretend to be religious figures and ascended masters and other beings that will be worshipped. That's one of their favorite things. So the most common situation, like in the New Age world, is all these people who are channeling, these ascended beings and what I call fake Jesus, because I believe there's a real Jesus, fake Jesus and fake Mary Magdalene and fake this and fake that. Most of those are jinn, because jinn pretending. They are jinn who are the imposters, not spirits, not demons. Jinn are the false light entities in these cases, because they love to eat up, like with a straw, suck up with a straw, all that worship energy. They love it. I do make a mention, and actually, I've got a few pages talking about jinn. I do make a mention of extraterrestrials in this section. I'm not ready to write a book that's solely about aliens, ETs. Most of what I talk about right now is spiritual entities. But the reality is that ETs, I'm going to say for a fact that they do exist, because I see them and I've seen them. And it is important to mention, if we're making a list of the common types of beings that shapeshift and pretend to be positive, benevolent beings, there are certain extraterrestrials that absolutely do that. So, for example, there's a race of beings called reptilians, and they are very known as being shapeshifters. So one of the things that they do sometimes is pretend to be someone's spirit guide, but they can take on all sorts of forms. So I have a section where I talk about a few different extraterrestrials, but I definitely don't go into detail. It's just like a mention of that, because that it is important to bring that up. That is something that can be in the mix for some people. What I noticed when I spoke with people in the some aspects of the UFO and truther movement is that there was an assumption that false light entities are all reptilians. Like, oh, we already know about that. That's reptilians. Da, da, da. It's like, no, 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 no. They are spirits, demons, jinn, reptilians. There are also some other things going on as far as ETs. And there are some semi-benevolent extraterrestrials who, I say semi-benevolent because they're not evil, but they do tend to, that they are etheric spiritual beings, or they can present themselves in their astral form, I should say. And sometimes they will present as angels. So some extraterrestrials will present as angels so that you're not afraid. So it can get really tricky and confusing. And this is one thing that I help people with in my program, my Spiritual Empowerment Academy, is that people learn to develop their own discernment. I'm giving them the skills to develop their own discernment, and then I'm giving them feedback. Like, this is what I am seeing. There are a lot of people who in the group that are dealing with spiritual warfare issues, but others who are there to learn spiritual discernment. And they'll frequently ask questions like, okay, I had this situation, or I'm thinking about working with this teacher or this material. Is this false light? And they want to get my opinion. And I don't give those opinions to the public, but I do for my paid students. And as I give my opinion about it, like, this is what I'm seeing psychically. This is what my false light spidey sense is seeing about this. And then they can compare it to what their inner guidance is giving them. And they're developing such amazing abilities. It's just so amazing to see how they're becoming more and more and more every day, extremely discerning about false light. They're able to call it out too. So we're basically creating the next generations of truth seers, people who are able to see through the deception of false light. And it's very exciting. So that also brings up just a little blurb for you, that if you're watching this and you're like, I need help with spiritual protection, spiritual warfare issues, or I'm having an issue with false light, and you want to work with me, more closely, then that would be with Spiritual Empowerment Academy. And you can find information about that at my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. That is the only way to work with me, is through the Academy, and only Academy members are able to purchase one-on-one sessions. And I do it that way on purpose, because several years ago, a handful of years ago, when I used to offer sessions for the public, they were not getting the results, because they would just come to me and expect me to fix them. And I don't really want to support the codependent, enabling, that dependency sort of thing. I don't think that's healthy. And those clients were not growing, and they weren't, their spiritual protection issues weren't getting resolved. They kept having to come back over and over again because they weren't learning it themselves. I was having to fix it each time. I'm happy to do the work, but I wasn't seeing the results, and except for the people who were in my program, who were doing the work and learning the processes and doing what we call daily protocols, doing the daily protocols, along with any one-on-one work that they might be doing with me. Those are the people that have had success across the board. So I finally said, you know what? I don't want to accept money from people who are not going to have success. And so I'm only going to work with people who are in the program, because those are the people who are achieving, whether it's spiritual discernment, freedom from spiritual warfare, or whatever. So that's why I do it that way. So you can find information about that at psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. What other questions do you have for me before we wrap it up? And then I'm going to tell you we have 2 exciting, really cool topics coming up for our next YouTube lives. Christopher wants to know, do you do DMT? That's a great question. I do believe in freedom of people to choose what substances they may or may not want to put in their body. I personally have never used any psychotropic drugs ever. That was just a choice that I made. And also, once I started to realize that I was having issues with spiritual warfare, I understood very clearly that engaging in any drugs, whether the intent was spiritual awakening or recreation, engaging in any drugs actually damages the energy field and makes a person more susceptible and vulnerable to false light interference and all sorts of negative entity interference. So I personally am very OCD about like all sorts of things, whether it's substances. I don't get drunk. And again, not judgment, like people can go and do whatever. I believe in freedom. But I don't do any of that, because any of my gifts are coming from a clean, grounded source. And I've seen over and over again people, actually, I had some friends that were doing, when I lived in Kansas City, who were doing DMT. I hadn't seen them for like a month. And then they did a couple of courses of DMT together. And then I saw them. First thing I did was I gasped. I saw all these entities attached to them, and their eyes looked all weird. And I was like, oh my God, they have been doing way too much DMT. Oh my gosh. So that's my opinion on that. I totally recognize not everyone agrees, and that is okay. But I'm glad you asked that question. That's really important, because if someone like me is saying, I'm receiving all this spiritual information, well, how is she getting it? Is it because she's doing certain substances, or is it coming through in like a clean and clear organic sort of way? And for me, clean and clear organic, I find that the more time I spend in nature, the more psychic I become. And so that's the way that I clarify or strengthen my gifts even more, rather than using substances that will actually draw in negative entities and create portals in a person's energy field. It creates all sorts of issues. So I definitely don't recommend it. I have a video somewhere on my channel that's addiction. If you look on my channel and you type in addiction, and I know you're not talking about addiction, but it's relevant because I talk about what drugs do to the energy field in that video. Susie wants to know, do jinn come out of bathrooms? I don't know. It sounds like there's probably a story around that, because I'm guessing that that's not a joke, that that's a serious question. They don't solely come out of bathrooms. They can hang out anywhere. They can be in nature. They can be in caves. They can be in a person's house. They can hang out anywhere. If you did walk into a bathroom and there was an entity in there that you believe was a jinn, it could have been a jinn, but they are not bathroom entities. Okay. If you want to expand on that a little bit, I'd be happy to answer, because I'm sure there's a story around that. Okay, Celestial says, in Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, they have their own version of jinn called Rakshasa, Asuras, Yokai. They're considered different tribes of jinn, and it's the same entity. Yes, I think we're talking about the same thing. Yep, very cool. Celestial says, the Hindu gods struggled with these entities, while Buddha succeeded overcoming their mind games. Yeah, that does not surprise me, because they're tricky. They are tricky. Susie wants to know, do jinn make you tired and lazy? Yes, they can. And I talk about that in the book, how I discovered that. They can give you brain fog. They can make you sleepy. That is definitely one thing that is distinct about jinn. That's a great question. Again, there's no way that I can cover, all of the factors of false light and the different types of entities in this short 90 minutes or however long we're going to go today. So I do recommend that you read the book. And by the way, if anybody here is a self-published author on Amazon, you know what I'm saying is true. That it's typical to make like $5 per book. So when I'm recommending that you get my book, it is not because I'm trying to get your money or like I'm trying to get rich off of you guys buying my book. Like, I might make enough each month from my books to buy a tank of gas. Okay. So when someone self-publishes on Amazon, it is, what's the phrase I want to use? It's like, it's a labor of love. It's a labor of love. It's like they're going to put forth publish a book on Amazon because the material that they're writing is close to their heart and important to them, and they want to share it with whoever will read it, and not because they're going to get rich off of it. Okay, so every time I recommend one of my books, whether it's in the comments, in the when you ask questions on some of the other videos, or when we're here live, anytime I recommend any of my books, it's simply because I wrote those books to help make resources very easily accessible to you in a very understandable form that you can easily use. That's very inexpensive, like $10 or under $20, right? So I hope that if you feel drawn to learn more about this topic, that you will get the book Revealing the False Light Agenda. I truly believe, like I've said a few times here today, that you will learn so much more by reading the book and going through the content and reading the stories than you could get from watching this video. I'm sure that you learned some things from this video, but like it'll be times 100, times 1,000 if you read the book. And you can read it in a weekend, honestly. It's a very easy read and very interesting stories is what I've been told. Grace says, thank you for being a guidepost for us to teach ourselves and learn. Thank you. Yes, that's the goal, is for you to, as I share this information, whether it's in the videos or the books or in my paid academy, for me to share this information so that you can take it in and recalibrate it to make it your own, and so that you can be empowered. And we talk about this a lot in my academy. This is literally why I named the academy Spiritual Empowerment Academy instead of Follow Maya's Advice Academy or Follow Maya Academy. It's like, no. Spiritual Empowerment Academy. Like, this is teaching you how to be empowered. And I'm just a guide. That's exactly the right word. Yes, Carol says, thank you, Maya, for your kindness and generosity of spirit. And Linda says, I like this format. Are you saying you like the format of the YouTube Live? Is that what you mean? I think I like it too. If you meant something else, feel free to share. I think we're done, except I want to tell you what topics we're doing in the next 2 YouTube lives, because they are really good ones. Or at least I know the next one coming. And Linda says, yes, that's what she meant. Okay, I need another drink. Oh, I almost forgot. I have another topic. Okay, so I really do pay attention to your questions and your comments in the YouTube, the YouTube comment sections. And I can't remember the name of who was posting some really good questions last week. And so I was thinking about their questions and I said, okay, I'm going to do a video. I'm going to do a mini lesson, but it's actually more than a mini lesson because I have a lot to say on it. So this is going to be our next month's YouTube live, and I don't have the official shortened version yet, but this is what I have. So for October 2025, thoughts, feelings, urges, obsessions, even Kundalini awakening can be caused by entities or black magic. Let me read that again. I know it's too long. I have to figure out what to do with this title. But this is what it's about. This is what we're going to be talking about. Thoughts, feelings, urges, obsessions, even Kundalini awakening can be caused by entities or black magic. And that's what we're going to talk about in next month's YouTube Live, and that's October 2025. And then November 2025, here's the topic. A clairvoyant, let's see, what does this say? A clairvoyant medium's, sorry, I have to edit this. Okay, let's start again. A medium's view of hell, or I might change that to a clairvoyant's view of hell, what I see about the lower realms. And I am able to see the afterlife realms. I have a video from a while back where I talk about the upper realms, the heaven realms. And let's talk about hell. Let's talk about what I see about it, how what I see is not the same as the religious view. There are some differences in what I see. So if you want to do your homework ahead of time, I have a video called A Medium's View of the Afterlife. And that's one that I did a couple years ago. But this one, I'm going to talk specifically about the lower realms, what we might call hell. And I think you'll find it very fascinating. So we have some interesting topics coming up. Any final questions before we go? Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. Oh, I see some more comments that I didn't see before. Adam says, and sorry, it looks like some comments didn't come through on one of my devices. So if I did miss any, it wasn't personal. Adam says, I heard that jinn are extremely chaotic. I would word it differently. I would say that jinn themselves are highly intelligent and purposeful planners. They themselves are not chaotic beings, but they love to create chaos. They know exactly what they are doing. So they're not like, oh, like all jumping around and like chaos entity. No, they're fully aware and cognizant. So the entity, so you might have meant this, but I'm going to just be really clear. The entity itself, is the jinn are not chaotic themselves. They're very clear and cognizant and like scarily intelligent and very tactical, extremely tactical and intentional in their intent to create chaos in your life. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, let me see if there's anything else that I missed. Interesting. Different comments are showing up. I've got 2 devices going. Interesting. I do not know why that is. All right, I think we're all set for tonight. And as always with our routine recently, I have been doing about 1 video a week. So let's recap the schedule so that you know what to expect. So thank you for being here. And then we're going to continue with this schedule where the first Tuesday of every month is when I come on live. And September and October are going to continue to be 5:30 Pacific time zone. So adjust for your time zone, 5:30 Pacific. November might be 5:30 Pacific, or usually in the winter we shift an hour, so I'll make plenty of announcements on that. And then the rest of the month I do little mini videos. I've already created one that's going to go up next week. So you'll have little mini lessons throughout the month. And usually at the end of the month, I take the last week off. I focus on other projects. So it's a little quiet at the end of the month, and then we gear up again for the live. So mark your calendar so that you can be here live every month and help join in on this wonderful collective energy. Thank you again for being the wonderful truth seekers and truth seers that you are. Again, thank you for being you. And I will see you ongoing on the YouTube channel. Have a great night.